Ladies and gentlemen, understanding a cold shell or warm shell can make or lose you a lot of money. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about that in commercial real estate this morning.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Hey.
Good
Oi.
morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back, Dave. Welcome back. You've been away for 8 weeks off Morning Minutes.
It's been a while, eh? It's been a while.
Where have you been?
I heard I've been missed.
Yeah. All the ladies have been asking.
Let's put it this way. Where did I go? Probably where half of Sydney, let alone Australia, probably went. That was to Europe. So definitely made the most of seeing uncharted parts of my experiences. I'd never been there. So we, Greece, Portugal, dabbled in the UK. It was all happening.
And you went to nudist colonies most of the time, apparently.
Most of the time. I tried to get you every time for a video call, and you were always busy. So,
Yeah, nice. Well, welcome back, bud.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. It's
Did
good to
much
be back.
change in Sydney?
Look, I think the changes that I felt when I was driving through Pittwater Road, entering from Brookie to DY, were the fact that what side of the road am I on? But just seeing, those buildings and developments that have been, in operations for quite a bit of time now, you can't believe 6-8 weeks and they just change like that. It's just unbelievable.
How far it goes.
Yeah. So this morning, our topic. We've got to start somewhere. Now we're dabbling on what the hell is a cold shell in commercial real estate. Now, I don't feel a lot of people would understand the terms of cold shell and warm shell. I definitely bloody didn't when I heard them when I started. But I think let's break down what they are and then ultimately what it entails for an owner and a tenant.
And I think there's a risk there. Generally, these are terms used in brand new properties, off the plan properties, unseen properties. When you're renting a commercial, any sort of commercial property, and you can walk through it and see what you get, it's one thing. But when you don't see what you can get, i.e. off the plan, with commercial, there's sometimes not a lot of obligation to supply stuff in terms of internal fit out. So the real estate agents and the landlords will coin the word warm shell. They will coin the word cold shell, and that could mean the difference to you as a tenant of almost $50,000 or $100,000 on the style of property that you're going in. So you've got to be really careful.
Absolutely. And what we mean by the differences there is with a cold shell, for example, we're talking about concrete floor, concrete brick walls, there's really not even a ceiling. There's no drop ceiling or anything, no insulation or anything like that. You effectively probably have a nice big long rectangular box that says, hey, you can get operating here. And, depending upon obviously what type of, supporting amenities there are in that site, you'd be able to probably forecast what they'll be or where they'll be, but you can't really give too much confirmation as such when it comes to that. Whereas, for example, a warm shell, let's think about it in the opposite sense. You do have a floor. You most likely do have walls. You do have a drop ceiling with insulation, and you can kind of gauge as well where the ducting is for the air conditioning and so forth. So there's those little variables that change between the both of them that can really make or break, I think, a business, whether you're starting or you're moving from one location to the next.
And you're also dealing with vacancies. So I think people be aware that that you should never assume that you're gonna if you're moving into a cold shell. The biggest risk that we've experienced is people assume, and they basically, once it's all documented and the lease is done, all the assumptions have been taken out of it. So you've got to make sure that don't assume if you're taking a cold shell, don't assume anything is going to be there because it should be there. Make sure it's all written up into your lease as to what you're exactly getting with your cold shell. things that you could be missing when you buy a brand new property could be air conditioning, ducting. Don't forget, there's also the compliance behind a cold shell. Once you've actually had your aircon approved, you're generally not going to have to get it approved again if it's a strata building, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a cold shell and you're trying to create a new office, for example, you may find that you get held back from strata on compliance for 3 months or 6 months or something like that. I know we did the what was the Mexican restaurant?
Mexican restaurant there, Guzman and Gomez.
No, the one we did in
Taco Bell.
So when we had Taco Bell take a cold shell, the amount of compliance that they had to get approved in order to get everything up and running was how many months, you reckon?
Oh God, in excess of 6 months, definitely. Way, like, there was definitely an extended period of time there, 6 months or beyond.
Right, yeah. And if you've signed a lease, agreeing that you're just taking it as it is straight away, and you can't start operating your business for 6 to 9 months, because you've taken a extremely cold shell in a commercial property, who's going to be paying that rent? Did you get rent-free period? Did you get you agree to rent to be your rent starting when you start operating? So who's going to be holding that baby when you haven't actually quite checked on your compliance and your cold shell? So they would have had to do grease trap organisation, compliance, aircon organisation, compliance, installation. So much there that you just got to be real careful. So before we go, what's the main difference between a warm shell and a cold shell, and how can we make sure people keep an eye on what to ask for?
So the main difference is, of course, aesthetically, we're going to be looking at, the floors, the walls, the ceilings, and then the amenities effectively that would come in it but aren't there already. And you mentioned air conditioning as well. I think if it's a retail spot, like a shop, that would potentially be a cafe, grease trap, exhaust, things like that, generally they're not there. They've not even been, formatted into what it's meant to be in the long run. So they're definitely things you've got to keep an eye on. In comparison, again, with the warm shell, you're already well aware of, the fundamentals that come with it. But obviously the ticks that you've gotten as far as approvals are concerned for things like air conditioning, for things, for example, if it's food approved, to be operating out of, if it's a shop or retail space. So you've got to be really careful with those sorts of things. And I'd say really doing your due diligence, and asking the questions where it's, deemed appropriate, and having an agent that can support that.
Cladding on walls, is it clad? Is it raw concrete? Ceiling tiles, is it a raw concrete ceiling, or are there tiles? Lighting, is there lighting in the property? There's not an obligation to have generally more than one light in some areas that you may assume it's just going to be lit up like a Christmas tree. Anything else we miss? Aircon. So the difference between warm shell.
I'd say, this topic, and we're speaking about a company like Taco Bell, for example, which is globally recognized, and they, for one, would be very thorough in their due diligence before taking on a cold.
Yeah.
There's a massive difference there versus, probably like a mum and dad shop, first time, business operators. They probably don't know. They walk in and there's a lot of expectations because they've seen shops popping up left, right, and center, and they don't know where it's at. So I feel this is definitely honed in on those, that demographic of, interested parties that aren't aware, don't know what to do. And I feel like, for one, you're looking at a cold shell, you're looking at it in its kind of very raw form, and you want to be gauging where things are going to be, what it's going to potentially look like. You're only going to get so much detail out of it. But as long as the bones of information are there, I feel like you can definitely be, you can go ticking away at potentially looking at signing a lease.
So it's probably more tenant beware, rather than landlord beware when it comes to a cold shell, warm shell. Don't assume. That's our show for today.
Awesome. Mark? Pleasure.
That's good, right? Anything else you want to talk about your trip around the world before you go?
Oh, look, I think I've lost my tan. It's over. I'm back to being white again. I think the only thing that's probably white's my teeth, but thanks to this lighting, you can't complain.
No, you haven't lost your tan, bro. And the highlight when you're overseas for the last 6, 7, 8 weeks? What was the highlight then?
Bloody eating dinner at like 10:30, 11 o'clock because everything's still open, and then waking up the next day at God knows what time and doing it all over again. No complaints. 5 kilos later, though, one can complain now, but at the time, paying for it now, mate. I'm getting punished.
And what did you miss about Sydney while you were away?
Oh, look, it's bloody the comfort of my own bed, mate, and having an awesome pillow that I've bloody put a lot of money in to have. But no. I think it's there's definitely an aura we have about our city, especially the northern beaches. I feel like this is a separate bubble to the rest of Sydney and the rest of the world. It's a pretty special place. So yeah, definitely miss that vibe.
Gold, mate. Have a great day, everyone. Have a beautiful weekend.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Cold chill, warm chill. See ya.